Welcome back, everyone, to the Mid-Level Show. This is the show where we get the mid-levels of performance medicine together, all in one place in this new virtual environment, talking about this week's Dictations episode and Doctor's Note written by Dr. Rogers. And I'm super excited to be here. This is going to be a fun one. It's on an interesting topic and one that, to be honest, and you guys can jump in here in a second, I haven't heard him talk too much about iodine. And that's the subject today. But before we get into that, I'm just going to introduce our cast because I'm just so pumped that these guys are on our team. And I'm so excited that they take the time out of their day. We record on Thursdays to record this and give their insight. We've got Amber Butler in our Kingsport office. We've got Fran Wilson in our Johnson City office. We have Kara Cairns in our Knoxville office. And then, of course, we have Andy Rogers, who's in Johnson City and our Kingsport office. Guys, welcome back to the show. Thank you for being here. And I'm just going to start us off. This week's Dictations episode was on iodine, and Dr. Rogers mentioned a book that was brought to him by Fran. So I'm gonna start with Fran. Just how did iodine get on your radar? And you don't have to go into specifics in the book, but how did that whole interaction between you and Dr. Rogers go?
Well, I don't know how the interaction. I just left the book on his desk. But there was real said you should read this. But I got interested in iodine when my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I just started researching it and trying to figure out everything that was out there that might help. And I ran into studies that said, there were some studies that said it can actually shrink tumors. No, I don't want to give any advice on what you should do, if you have breast cancer, but there was stuff about iodine being very beneficial. And then I started taking it for fibrocystic breasts, and it really decreased that kind of lumpy bumpiness that I got and the pain that I got before I would get my periods. So it worked fantastic for me for fibrocystic breasts, and I've been on it for years, and it's just been a wonderful thing. I also had read a lot about how beneficial it can be to the thyroid. And I always thought, well, I'm a little hypothyroid, a little iodine wouldn't hurt. So I've been really happy with the supplement.
Do you mind me asking, Fran, what iodine supplement you're taking?
I take Iodoral. It's one of the ones that's actually mentioned in that book, Dr. Brownstein's book. And I take 12.5 milligrams, which is actually 833% the daily value, but I haven't had any issues.
And do you mind me asking, did you self-supplement? I mean, are there any concerns about just going to the store? Because I know he mentioned, for certain people, you shouldn't just put yourself on this, but you were aware that you were a little hypothyroid. And was there any concern about starting it? Did you have any side effects or anything, or how did you go about putting yourself on the supplement?
No, I always have treated myself with whatever, but I just read about it and I just decided I would try it and see how I felt. And I did not, I didn't get my levels tested ahead of time, but it's like 90% of the population is deficient. So I figured I'm probably in that 90%. So I did not go about it scientifically. I just thought I'll try this and see if it works. Yeah. And it worked. I had tried eliminating caffeine and that didn't go well. That never goes well for me. Every time I try that, I kind of like a little bit of caffeine. So, and it's something said, well, if you eliminate saturated fat, fibrocystic breast disease will stop. But that didn't work either. So this worked. And
which is consistent with his note that shared about how iodine being concentrated in the breast and ovary, I think it's ovaries, which I did not know. I've always thought iodine thyroid, so that was interesting to me. Plus the fact that apparently fluoride and chlorine, which my children had a disappointment on Tuesday, and they were like, fluoride on your kids' teeth? I'm like, absolutely, yes. And then I come home, read the doctor's note, and about passed out. So I got to do some more research on that because I've always thought fluoride and teeth were a good combo. So this kind of has complicated my teeth cleaning routine.
These doctors make life
Turn
complicated.
my world upside down.
Andy, go ahead.
I also.
It makes me think about what's actually being fortified in like fluoride in the water, and then B vitamins in cereals, and then iodine in salt. So it's almost like we're trying to get rid of deficiencies by adding nutritional nutrients into foods that we're already eating. So I never thought, the thing I learned from school was iodines and salts. So developed countries are more often not going to have thyroid issues like other countries are, but I feel like that may not be the case if we're not getting enough iodine. And also too, most of us might have deficiencies. I thought it was pretty cool. I didn't know that about fluoride, because I always thought fluoride, you got white teeth if you've had fluoride. And I've seen kids, it's probably about 10 years ago. I stayed with the family out in Arizona where they did not have fluoride in the water, and the kids' teeth didn't look like they had fluoride in it. So right. I always thought that was a good thing.
A quick note on the fluoride. I've been using Tom's, and I'm sure Andy's seen that in Dr. Rogers' cabinet. But Tom's toothpaste is fluoride free, and that's what I've been using. Not that I'm any sort of example when it comes to taking care of your teeth. So I don't know if I'd follow that, Amber. but Kara, let's jump into you. Before we started recording, you had a bunch of vitamins in front of you. Talk to us a little bit about what you took from the note.
He was talking about 1/3 of the world's population lives where there's iodine deficiency, but we talk about watch your sodium in your diet. We have patients with swelling, heart disease. Watch your sodium. And then you end up being deficient, with iodine. But we have the triple action thyroid, if y'all can see that. And I was looking at it. This is in micrograms, so it has some other ingredients in it too, and then also too some selenium. This is something we just got in, the super selenium complex. Some people will eat just a Brazil nut or two a day, but for those people that don't like Brazil nuts, then this is a good way to get your selenium in. So there's definitely, and like Fran has a very good one, she said was mentioned in the book, so definitely a pharmacy grade supplement for absorption.
Well, what's in the triple action thyroid, Kara? Because I know he did mention selenium in this note along with magnesium. What's in that triple action thyroid?
Vitamin A, B12, iodine, magnesium, and L-tyrosine. So anyway, yeah, it's but it sounds like there's 350 micrograms, which is 233% of the daily value. So I think there's probably more in Fran's. What's yours, Fran?
A lot more. There's 833%. It's 12.5 milligrams.
Okay. And then the selenium, this is vitamin E and selenium. So, but anyway, if you're looking for some ideas to get some more iodine in your diet, if you're trying to cut back on your salt, he had mentioned like the Himalayan salt and, things like that. So,
and you can also get it from more natural sources like kelp, sea iodine.
Say that one more time, Fran.
You can get it from natural sources like kelp and sea iodine. Some of the shellfish actually have iodine.
And do you guys know, one like Kara, I believe, just mentioned the Himalayan salt, and then Andy was talking about salt intake with in underdeveloped countries. Salt iodine was not always in salt? Am I wrong on that?
I don't think it was. No, it's been added to salt, iodized salt. So they added it to it so that we could have it in there without us replacing otherwise. If you add it in the salt, then you automatically get it. Kind of like with kids eating fortified B vitamins in cereal. They're going to have cereal anyways, so they're fortifying that food with vitamins. Two, it makes me think, I just finished a book called The Doritos Effect, which was unreal, and it was kind of scary because food is not the real food that we used to have 60, 70 years ago, which I feel like is why we have like getting it from the natural stuff may be tough to find, where food is losing its nutrient value as well. They've looked at what broccoli has now versus what it had in the 1940s, and it's half of the vitamins that it normally had. A real head of broccoli versus a real head of broccoli. So our world's just changing. So I feel like that's why I believe in vitamins and supplements. I feel like we don't get them even from the natural foods that we're eating too.
Yeah, and for those listening out there, Andy did a wonderful episode of Carb Watch on the Dorito effect that I would encourage everyone to go watch, because it really is super interesting. One of the things you mentioned there was food and flavoring, and it's just such a big deal how they can make anything taste a certain way, and your brain is telling you that you're getting something that you're actually not, and so anyway, for the people out there who have not seen that or listened to it, please go out there and do it. It'll really help you choose your food more wisely. And I know, we're not going to get too much into checking levels, but just for everyone out there, it's important that you don't just hop on iodine. And that's something that he was very clear about. And you do need to see kind of where you're at or talk to somebody about this. But it's just, this note, I get a lot of emails after we send out the doctor's note and Performance Weekly, and this was one that really connected with people in a way that's like, hey, that sounds a lot like me. And I think part of that was with the thyroid interaction, and how thyroid and underactive, or is it overactive or underactive? You guys tell me.
Hypo. How that's such a big thing. Underactive.
An underactive thyroid. And then he mentions, goiters, and as Amber was saying with how this was more prevalent in women because of its concentration in the ovaries, breast, and in the uterus. It's just super, super fascinating. And do you guys have anything else that you picked up from this that you think would be valuable to the people listening to the show on iodine or what Andy was talking about with food and flavoring?
He did mention you do need to watch your toxic exposure. Chlorine, and I think he said chloride, and it was bromine or bromide were the two halogens that attack the thyroid. So or attached to it, in fluoride. Watch your toxic exposure, because it does have an effect. And like you were mentioning, I've always used non-fluoridated toothpaste for my teeth. And I have a whole house dechlorinator on my water, just so I don't have that constant exposure. It does make a difference, and iodine can be protective because it's going to take up one or the other.
And I think, and you guys can piggyback on this. He mentions in there that we live in a toxic world, and I think that's what Fran's getting at. Are there any other areas that are super practical for people to limit toxins in their life? It doesn't have to be deal with iodine necessarily. Anybody jump in there on just how to practical stuff that you've either done in your own life or talk to patients about for either getting rid of toxins in your immediate environment or something along those lines.
I do. It's not going to be a popular opinion though. Alcohol. Alcohol's a toxin. I'm sorry, it is. It's ethanol. It's not really good for you. So we tend to say, I did a carb watch on it with what's really good out of alcohol, and people tout red wine is good.
Resveratrol,
yes. Any evidence in it, but too, that's something that is a very commonly used daily drug for a lot of people, and it technically can be easily become a toxin. So it's not popular. It's something I'm not giving up. I love it. but too, I feel like we often can overdo that, and that's an easy one to overdo. He does also talk about fake sugar. He talks about Splenda. Splenda is chlorinated sugar, is what he says. So that's an easy one to cut out. Use a different type. If you're going to use a fake sugar, don't use Splenda. In the book, The Doritos Effect talks about not using stevia either. So it's interesting. I do think, I think it's important for listeners, from what Fran said, she had added iodine and felt a change. She's not having the fibrocystic changes in the breast from having iodine. Have a goal. I think it's nice to have a goal in mind of what are you trying to fix with this addition if you do add it. So you know you're doing something.
And if you do add it and you're on thyroid medicine, you do need to be careful because you may need less thyroid medication. And I think he kind of mentioned that you have to be careful. And I guess if you're on some of the potassium sparing diuretics and you don't want to take too much, which is why he advises testing. There's certain people who should not go on iodine.
And on that note about testing, and I had mentioned this before we started recording, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to go into it because I'm not extremely well versed, but I looked it up to make sure it was still a thing. We used to tell patients to do this, and I haven't in a while. I haven't talked to Dr. Rogers about this, so I may need to like self-correct later, but a very crude test that you can kind of just see, is iodine even an issue for me where I should go in and be tested? Is called like I want to say a patch iodine test. So basically it's where you're going to get a solution or a little tincture of iodine and the orange solution, not the clear one. You're going to paint a 3-inch square on your abdomen, inner thigh, or inner forearm, and allow it to dry before touching anything. And then basically you're just watching that for 24 hours to see how fast does your body absorb iodine. Now, like I said, this is a crude test, but if it's still there within 24 hours, that's a good sign that your iodine levels are okay. For people who are just very deficient, it's going to absorb super quickly. Not to replace that. The best testing, I think, if you were to do that, if you're kind of on the fence, and then go in and let's do the 24-hour urine or look at some to get a real clear value. So as Andy was saying, like you can have that goal in mind, but that's a crude way if you're kind of like, how do I even know of something that you can do? And you can actually, look that up as far as the iodine patch tests.
And I believe he mentioned there's another there's a dip test that ZRT does that is super interesting, and like Amber was saying, we need to get a little more educated on some of the testing because it is something that seems to be very important. And another thing, just as we're on levels and testing, he talks a lot about checking levels, vitamin D levels. He mentioned in one of our videos this week being between 60 and 80, and because I think there was a question about can you take too much vitamin D? So for the listeners out there who are interested in supplementing, don't be afraid to check your levels, and because there are some optimal places that you want to be. Anybody else want to add anything before we head out of here? We're running a little bit out of time. Anything else to add, guys? We are all good to go. Guys, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out today to do the mid-level show. And to the listeners out there, thank you for joining us every single week. This is my favorite show, the mid-level show on Performance Medicine Audio. We're on YouTube, Apple Podcast, anywhere a podcast can be found, we are there. So if you have not subscribed, please do. And a quick ask, if you have not given us a review, that really helps us be found by more people like you. So please write a review, good or bad. We need the feedback. I've got Olivia here right next to me asking for feedback. So please review and write a review. Write a review and subscribe. Guys, thanks so much. We'll see each of you soon.
Bye-bye.